Period, bottom line. As you saw in my book, when I talk about this nonsensical debate over critical race theory and all of that, and woke and all of that stuff, people are using the way they frame the terminology, you're automatically losing. Now, it's about giving access to people who historically didn't have an opportunity to even have their applications looked at because they were the wrong color, or they were the wrong gender, or they grew up in the wrong part of town. That's what it's talking about. Nobody's talking about like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense nomination, and him being what we would call a DEI hire because he's actually not qualified. My point is that he's saying things to audiences with the Chris Cuomos and the Hannitys and the Tucker Carlsons of the world. He's saying things to people who already have negative views about us, negative thoughts about us, and they're looking for that black friend, just like you see on the TV shows, that black friend to confirm what they're already thinking because they don't engage with enough of us. So Stephen A., if that's what you're going to do in this political space, then people like myself are going to continue to call you out.
Today, I am honored to talk to Dr. Omekango Dibinga, a trilingual poet, a professor, motivational speaker, and global activist for justice. As a professor at American University and the author of Lies About Black People, Dr. Dibinga has inspired audience across the world, also myself, with his powerful words and commitment to challenging stereotypes. Let's dive into the journey, his mission, and his impact of his work. But before we get started, I'd like to give a big shout out to today's sponsor, Aura. All right, so I got a question for you. Do you value your privacy and your security, and especially with all your information being accessible to anyone and everyone on the internet? Well, I'm excited to bring to you today's sponsor of this video, Aura. There was approximately 800,000 reports of identity theft in the first 3 quarters of 2024 alone. Credit card fraud remains the most prevalent form of identity theft, with about 300,000 cases reported. And the United States continues to experience numerous of data breaches throughout various industries, compromising your financial and personal information, just like millions across America. Aura is the all-in-one digital security solution that protects your identity, finances, and personal information online. With Aura, you get real-time alerts for suspicious activity, VPN protection to keep your browsing private, and even dark web monitoring just to see if your information is out there where it shouldn't be. So once again, stop leaving yourself vulnerable to data breaches. Click the sponsor link down below to get 14 days free to see if your information, your data has been exposed. Back to the video. Value in these kind of conversations, and that's the kind of, sources I look for, when I'm formulating my, notes or topics of what or whatever I'm talking about. Like, you're the source that I'm looking for these answers, and especially when it comes to DEI, which is on my list here. Like, that's a big conversation, and once again, as you already know, like, there's a lot of misinformation about like everything that DEI is supposed to stand for, what it's meant to do, or what it's supposed to like try to combat the historical damage that is done to plenty of people. Like, you are the guy that we can ask these questions and get accurate answers, and not just like a random person just pulling stuff out of their behind. So first, my I guess to kind of start from square one, like, when it comes to the 2024 elections, like, what were your initial reactions to the election results?
Well, first of all, I gotta thank you. I mean, to say that you're some random person on the internet, no way, shape, or form. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, your politics, your following, your audience, and just the fact that you chose to call it, power to the people. One of the things that Malcolm talked about, and his followers talked about, was make it plain. And when people come to your page, they know exactly what they're going to get. And we need more of that nowadays in a world where everyone's trying to play this side or play that side or, do this for followers. You're grounded in who you are. And we just need more of that now more than ever, to be quite honest. And I say that because it ties directly to the election. What I thought about the election, as I put in one of my YouTube posts, simply was America, Americud.
Mm.
Period, bottom line. And the fact of the matter is, I feel like I'm not even getting into the we can of course get into VP Harris's politics, but the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump didn't have three however months head start on Kamala Harris, because she only had 3 months to run.
Yeah.
He had a 248 plus year history on Vice President
Mm.
Harris to run. Probably even longer than that if you go to Nicole Hannah Jones's 1619 project, who talks about the rewriting of the American origin story, right?
No.
Don't go back to the Declaration of Independence or 1776 and all that other stuff. Go back to 1619. But either way, he had more time and a head start. You know why? Because everybody's talking about Democrats need to abandon identity politics. He ran on the ultimate identity
Mm.
politics, which is white male identity. He ran on that. All of this nonsense about, oh, he ran because about the price of eggs and all of that. Don't let anybody tell you all that and believe that. Look, the fact of the matter is, who was the only candidate on either side of it wasn't Biden, wasn't Harris, it wasn't Vivek, talking about, look at my beautiful white skin.
Mm.
That wasn't any of them. No other candidate was in panels talking about, do you want to have the black president or the white president? He ran on all of that.
Yeah.
He ran on masculinity. I'm going to protect you women no matter what. Look what they're going to do with that woman. The leaders overseas, they're going to play with her. They're going to be her plaything. He ran on that. That's what America was built on. He ran on being a white, heterosexual, cisgendered male who pretended to be Christian. And that was enough for people to to not want to support the black woman. That's what it came down to. It wasn't about any other thing. And that's why Latinos voted for him, in males, I should say, in large numbers, because of the politics. They had the masculinity and the racial thing going on, because we know that we got issues between, Latino and black folks. Now, of course, they're black Latinos. It's a conversation for another day.
Mm.
But that's what it came down to. That's America's history. And that's why we are where we are today.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit that nail on the head. Like I even mentioned, a few times, especially throughout the election. Like I can at least remember, like, the one time where Harris's blackness came into question was from Donald Trump.
That's right.
When he was at that convention.
NABJ, that's right.
Yeah,
National
and
Black Journalist.
yeah, and he made question, which to me was kind of ballsy, like, to question someone's blackness in a room full of black people, and then like Harris, like for all the critiques we could have of Harris, like, one thing she didn't do, which, I mean, I don't know if it should have been something she should have done, but she didn't play into that. But the only people who were, like, facilitating that conversation was Republicans. Is she really black? Is she half black? Is she more Indian than people going into her history? And she wasn't playing up to that, but people still pinned that on Harris as if she was playing the identity politics.
Well, one of the things you see in my book, and I have that chapter on your racialized vocabulary, is two things I want to point out. Number one, our whole conversation about race is wrong, particularly as it relates to Vice President Harris. You can't be half black and half Indian. Indian is a nationality. Black is a race. It's like saying somebody is half French, half Irish, from Ireland, and half Muslim. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can't. So you can't. But that's because we don't have a racial language in our country. We throw out things like that. In hip hop, half black and Filipino. Like, that was the whole thing. With that '90s hip hop and the like. So of course she is Indian. So the real way to talk about her is that she is an American she's a black American of Indian and Jamaican heritage. Because the mother was from India and the father was from Jamaica, right?
Yeah.
But we're not even trained enough to have that conversation. So that was one of the problems. And the fact of the matter is that Vice President Harris had two hands tied behind her back because she could not run on her race. She's always identified as a black woman. She could not identify, and this is a country that made the one drop rule, which she completely understood,
Yeah.
right? And her mother understood because she was raised primarily by her mother. So she couldn't run on that, and she couldn't run as a woman because people didn't want that. When was the last time you see a woman presidential candidate maybe choose to like wear a dress because they just felt like it? They got to do the pantsuit, they got to do all of that stuff and try to appear more masculine. And when you talk the second part, when you talk about Trump being ballsy to bring that up, it wasn't ballsy because he doesn't respect us. Whenever Trump goes into a black audience, he's never talking to the black audience. He's talking to the white audience watching him talk to the black audience. And his mentality is, I'm going to go there and show them what's up. I'm going to go them and show them who's boss. And so his white audience watching from a distance can be like, yeah, he told them. Yeah, he shut them down. That's what was going on there. So he's going to do any black audience he's in front of. He's always going to say something like, what the hell do you got to lose? Or do you want the black president or white? All because that's who he is. Because he never respects us. But he respects what the looks like of saying he went to talk to black people. He went to a black church in Michigan, somewhere in Detroit, Michigan, I believe. And there was all white people in the church, with a couple of black folks up front. That's who he is.
Jeez. And that's one thing that I read in your book, and this is where, pulling, this knowledge from you is important, because you even made mention, like, even when you're talking about people of color, like even not understanding what that means, like even myself, I'm still, slowly trying to train myself of even calling conservatives or Republicans the right. Like they are, there's nothing right about them. So like when you mentioned, I'm like, I can't keep calling them the right. Like that is even the play off words. Like people may not like understand what they're saying, and that could lead the whole conversation astray. So even the definitions.
That's what Trump does. That's what Republicans do. They frame everything in patriotism, right? They frame everything in love for America, love of country. Look at, and he knows this. Trump knows the media better than anybody else. I mean, this guy is an admirer of Hitler. He's the one who said, and Hitler's the one who said, he who controls the media controls the race. Look at his social media platform. I never refer to it by its name. Truth Social, right? When I'm in conversations, I say his social media platform, because even if you're throwing out the word truth, you're giving him that, right? So when you call these guys the right and they're wrong, you're still giving them that. And what Politics 101, whenever you're using the language of your opponent, even if you have the best argument ever, if you're using their language, they're winning. Period, bottom line. As you saw in my book, when I talk about this nonsensical debate over critical race theory and all of that, and woke and all that stuff, people are using the way they frame the terminology, you're automatically losing. Now, on the racial vocabulary, for those of y'all who don't understand what we're talking about here, I'm gonna go to page 39 of Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racist Stereotypes, because I got a lot of poetry in here, and I want to read this shorter poem. What makes me BIPOC? Is it my locks, the way I talk, the way I rock my socks? What makes you white? Is it because you're always right? Is it the privileges assigned as a birthright? What makes you Asian, bro? Is it your soul? What does a Korean have in common with a Pakistani, yo? And why did we thankfully stop using Oriental? What makes you Latino, or is it Latinx? Who decided which term was the best? Are you Native American or are you Indian? Maybe it just depends on the city I'm in. Are you a Jew or are you Jewish? Is it about your collective history or because people assume you're all rich? I looked at my dark pants and I definitely don't look like that. So who decided that with my brown skin that I'm black? Seems pretty whack. When you call someone a term, is it because you mean it or is it because you don't want to offend and it's convenient? At the end of the day, descriptors we use matter and are often based on racist stereotypes that we must shatter.
Man, that is bars right there. And I love that part, like that theme throughout your book. Like you would have your poetry kind of set up the chapter, so
Yes.
you already can kind of get a feel of what you're going to get into. And, when I'm writing all these notes, like I would kind of see like, kind of referencing throughout your poetry. And even with that chapter, like it's so much to learn of even the basic language. Like I suck at English already. So already having to,
Me.
be mindful of the words that I say. And even like, when I was recording some videos a couple of days ago, I was mindful of not using people of color because now I have an understanding, not the best 100%, but at least I'm thinking of it and I'm aware of it, and,
That's the
and
goal.
that's how when you're reading something, it has an impact because now it's in you. Now you're consciously thinking about it, even when you're not purposely doing it. And that's
Absolutely.
one thing that I was trying, that I try to tell, my audience is like definitions of words mean something.
Oh my.
You like the word woke, like it just infuriates me. Even seeing, someone like Mark Lamont Hill when he was talking to Pierce Morgan and he's talking about DEI,
Mm.
and the way and I love how he called him out. Like Pierce Morgan was using it almost like a slur, like,
Yes.
oh, this DEI hire, like, and they only use it for black people and
Yep.
checking their credentials, and,
Yep.
and we're not even really checking credentials, but just using it as a slur in a way. And when I seen your Dr. Phil episode, that's when I literally took notes off that video. I had like a page long of like word for word of what DEI means and how it's supposed to be implemented and what's supposed to be the outcomes of it. It seems like those three aspects no one knows anything about or even very little, and if they don't know it, they're using the conversation of it wrong.
That's
And
right.
that's why we have people talking about DEI and they have no idea what they're talking about. So can you please, explain it to me once again, my and my audience, so if there's ever any questions, they can reference a video like this and say, this is what DEI is supposed to do, this is what
Mhm.
it means, and this is why people have it wrong.
Well, DEI has taken different names over the years, kind of like people have added to it. So, people talk about diversity, then people talk about diversity and inclusion, and then people talk about diversity and equity. And so over the years, it's become diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, also people have added other letters to it, like DIBA, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and access. Some people have added a J on the end for justice as well. But that's the idea. So when we talk about diversity, right? Diversity is the state of difference and understanding difference. Equity is not the same as equality, right? So I have three kids. When my son was, let's say, 9 months old and my daughter was 4 years old, they both have bedrooms upstairs in my house. That's equality. But when it's time to go up the stairs to go to bed, one needs more help to get up those stairs. That's equity.
Mm.
Providing resources to those in need so they can get to equal footing with everybody else. That's what equity is about. And then inclusion is about making sure that people are part of the conversation, are part of the decision making. I spoke at a company once, and there was a Native American sister who was talking about how in their conversations about the indigenous community, their motto is no talk about us without us,
Mm.
right? So this idea of inclusion is not just the look in terms of, yeah, we hired some black people, we hired some Latinos. It's inclusion. Dr. King said the real integration is not just being able to live next door. It's about the inclusion, the sharing of power, resources, and responsibilities, right? So who's the CEO? What does your CEO look like? Who's the principal of the school? Who's the sheriff? That's what inclusion is talking about. And so when we're looking at DEI programs, people have talked about affirmative action as a DEI program. And yes, it was a program for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's important to know, as I talk about in my book, the primary beneficiaries of affirmative action were white women, actually, in many different ways. And they still are in many ways, but people don't want to look at it. So when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the last thing I'll say is that it's not about hiring or admitting hiring unqualified workers or admitting unqualified students. In no way, shape, or form. It's about giving access to people who historically didn't have an opportunity to even have their applications looked at because they were the wrong color, or they were the wrong gender, or they grew up in the wrong part of town.
Yeah.
That's what it's talking about. Nobody's talking about like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense nomination, and him being what we would call a DEI hire because he's actually not qualified. But this country has always had affirmative action for white men. That's what slavery was rooted in. That's what the Homestead Act was rooted in. That's what the indentured servant system was rooted in. So I hope that gives people some clarity when people are talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Man, that's beautiful. And I mean, that hits so many areas. Like one part in your book that once again will never escape my mind is you talked about Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yes.
How people was just grilling her and just saying she was a DEI hire because Joe Biden said, he wants to get, more black individuals in the Supreme Court. So with Biden saying something like that, and of course, people are going to latch on to just that phrasing and then just run with it. Once again, they don't care about her qualifications. They're just going to say she's a DEI hire. And then when you compared her to what's her name? I forget.
Coney Barrett.
Yeah. And it's like looking at the qualifications, you said that she's probably one of the most qualified individuals in American history. And it's like, how do people miss that? Like, how do people like disingenuously look at someone like her and purposely say she's a DEI hire and underwriting her hard work that she put in to get to where she's at?
Look, we've had, as I said in the book, we have people who have been Supreme Court justices who haven't even been lawyers. I mean, the list goes, if you go down the far list of history of the over 200 Supreme Court justices, I mean, some of them were not practicing law. We can go down the list. The fact of the matter is that people do not respect black qualifications and black excellence. We all grew up in a household where somebody said to us, you got to be twice as good as white folks. But often it's twice as good to get half as much, right? So we can go to the right schools, we can go to all the places, but at the end of the day, we don't have the complexion of connection. That's what it really comes down to. And when you look at people like Amy Coney Barrett and so on and others, they have the complexion of connection, and that's where it starts. And so for us, Dr. King talked about, when the very color of your skin has been stigmatized, has been turned into a weapon, people are automatically going to look at you as less than from the jump. And then if they don't associate with anybody that looks like you, the only vision they have of us is what they see on TV. And we know how TV makes us look. They're automatically going to assume that we either got an affirmative action, that we come from some single parent, gang-ridden household, and we didn't do anything to get where we are today, and somebody just hired us because we were black. And that's an opinion that resonates across so many of these people's across the country, and quite honestly, across the globe. I've been to almost 30 countries, and that's why I have in my chapter, a globalized racism chapter. But that's what it comes down to. It's that same mentality that made them ask for Barack Obama's birth certificate. It's that same mentality that makes people look at me online and say, how did you get a check mark? How did you get a doctorate? And another reason they do it is because they're haters.
Yeah.
They don't have the same educational background, knowledge, information, and they can't stand the fact that we have it. Look, when you look at the race riots across American history, Rosewood, Black Wall Street, all these, most of them started from an accusation of something that a black person did to a white girl, as simply as, bumping into them, right? Yep. But another part of it was the jealousy of what those black communities had that those poorer white communities didn't have. And they'll try to snatch it from us in any way, shape, or form when they get angry, politically, legally, violently, whatever it takes. That's what the angry ones who don't want us to be successful will do. And for those who can't, get violent, they'll just throw out the rhetoric. DEI hire is the new N-word. That's the new term. Yeah. Just like when people will talk about urban versus rural communities, urban means black. DEI is the new N-word for them, and that's how they're getting away with it. Now, to be fair, they have you use DEI terms for like white women and so on and so forth. But generally speaking, they talking about us, and that they starting with us, and then they talking about everybody else.
Exactly, and to kind of go back to that the Tulsa riots that happened, like they actually came out with new reporting with that, And from what I read, like you say, like some situations had happened between a few white people and African Americans that lived in that area, and then with just my understanding, like they were upset about that, and then they kind of just attacked this area like that. But with the reporting, it showed like this was planned for months, and they just and like you say, is like when people or when I'm having these conversations with people, like they say like, oh, black people just need to stop being lazy, or they need to stop depending on government. And when you look at Tulsa, Black Wall Street, like that was a beautiful example of what people are always saying black people need to do. And like you said, like either jealousy or anything in between, like that destroys what black people have built. And when it comes to DEI, and the best example of what's going on today, with the fires that's going on in LA, with what's her name?
The Mayor Bass.
Yeah, Bass, like we can critique her, how she's handling the fires. We could say she did this well or she didn't do this well. Like that is good discussion. We can have that conversation, but just like I say, everyone, oh, she's a DEI hire. Oh, she's not fit for the job because she's DEI. Like that right there is like they didn't just pull a random black person walking down the street and say, hey, you're going to be mayor of this, hundreds of thousands of people. Like she's qualified and she was voted in. And like you say, like people they don't want to say the N word. So they're going to say, oh, you DEI hire.
Yeah, but you got to also even understand with Mayor Bass, it's like she's not the mayor of all of the territories that are burning, right? There's stuff going on all across, that don't just pertain to the areas that she's covered. That's number one. Number two, she just got there. So people are talking about policies that have been in place even before she got there. Three, there's also a governor. There's Gavin Newsom. There are sheriffs. There are fire folks. There are so many other people. But this idea of blame a black woman first and foremost, that's also in the history of America. Let me give you another example. This is not even related at all. Remember the Super Bowl with Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake? He literally pulls off her bra and then she gets blamed. Her career gets destroyed and his career gets on, or at least temporarily destroyed. His career soars after that. Like I can run down the list of things that don't involve directly black women, but they get scapegoated for it. So this blame a black woman mentality that they're putting on her for all of that's going on with these wildfires, it's ridiculous, it's sexist, it's racist, but this is what they do. And that's why we have to be mindful to call it out. Like you said, we can always look. Black folks will be the first to critique other black folks if they ain't doing right. So it's like we can have commentary about different policies that Bass or other people might be involved in, but it's based in honesty, and most of us are based in us wanting each other to do better and be better. But to put all the blame on her for what's going on there, and there's so many other names and people and places and faces that can get some of that smoke. I mean, no pun intended, literally, but the fact of the matter is that's where people like you, people like me, people like the platforms we're a part of need to speak up, because now more than ever, we have to make sure that we are defending black women and protecting black women and making sure that in our communities, black men are protected as well. Our black children are protected as well. If we don't do it because they're coming for all of us in some way, shape, or form under this administration, nobody else is going to do it for us.
Exactly. I couldn't have said that better myself. And like you alluded to, like when it comes to these fires, like it's so many other people who are in a position of power or leadership that could take the blame. And like you said, like we're not calling Gavin Newsom a DEI hire. We're not like the chief of police or everyone else who has a hand in the policies that came before Mayor Bass. Like it's so many people that could take the blame and probably rightfully so, but no one is saying they are a DEI hire.
That's right.
And that's problematic, because then that's always going to be another battle that black people have to fight. Like we have to always show our credentials, and even that's not going to be enough. Like you can go to whatever college, whatever institutions, or have these speaking accolades under your belts, but it's never going to be enough. And that's always going to make other people feel like they're better than you because they
That's
could just
right.
say, oh, you're a DEI hire. And that just right there just shoots everything down that you have built up,
But
and
notice they won't have any conversations about legacy admissions, right? They won't have
yeah.
conversations about like George Bush Jr. Who was Yale or was Stanford, whatever college he went to is escaping me. But all of these guys who Jared Kushner's of the world, all of these guys who get into colleges because their father or mother or grandfather or grandmother's name is on the building. They don't have conversations about that, right? So the late Dr. Joe Madison used to say, it doesn't matter how you got into a school, you all got to take the same test to get out. That's really what it comes down to. But they don't want to share this country. They don't want to have a Dr. King called the sharing of power, resources, and responsibility. And so when you talked about Rosewood and I'm sorry, Tulsa and Black Wall Street. One of the things we have to understand, as I talk about it in Lies About Black People, is that first they destroyed it by violence, and then we rebuilt, and then they tore it down again by government policies. So it's like sometimes one comes before the other. It's like whichever one doesn't work, they'll try the other one. That's been this, and they dropped fire bombs. People flew planes dropping stuff over that. No prosecutions, no anything. And if people really think that that can't happen in this country again, especially with this empowered Trump, more empowered than his last election. I mean, look what's already happening before this man's even getting into office, right? People have to understand that with this person as president now being in office, it's only going to get worse if we don't stay organized and committed to making sure that we're protecting and supporting each other.
Exactly, and this is a perfect segue to Mr. Stephen A. Smith himself. Like this, this is the individual, and it's weird because I have covered him before, like a year ago, and he will say some pretty not like extremely like knowledgeable things, but like on the surface is like, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
But like I seen like literal a transformation of what he's representing. And it's so infuriating because if
Yeah.
that's who he was from, day one, I would have a different outlook on him. But to see that transformation happen is like, what is going on? And I don't know if it's something I don't know about this Trump administration with wealthier people that I just don't see because I'm not wealthy. So it's like, why do you think? And I know you cover Stephen A. Smith a few times, so I kind of want to get like your perspective because it feels like maybe I'm just jumping the gun, like maybe I'm just the only one seeing something wrong here.
Oh, you're not the only one. The things that people will do for proximity and the things that people will do to stay relevant in different circles, it's really amazing. Some people say you do strange things for change, right? And what I'm noticing with Stephen A. Smith is the same. I know other people. I don't do this. I know other people call him a sellout and Uncle Tom. First of all, Uncle Tom was not a sellout. He didn't, rat out. Another conversation. I'm not into calling black people that. I'm not calling into calling traitor and all of that type of stuff. But what I said about Stephen A. Smith is what I continue to say. You need to apply the same journalistic principles that you use to sports that you say and use in politics. Because all I hear from him when he talks politically are MAGA talking points. And if you're going to come out and use MAGA talking points, people are going to call you MAGA. So you can say that you voted for Harris, but if you're going to be talking about using insurrection in air quotes, if you're going to talk about, he literally said, I don't give an issue about either party. If you're going to say things and have most of your critiques directed at Biden and Democrats and not have any real critiques for what the Trump administration or the Trump campaign has been doing, no comments about like the damn near Nazi rally that was at Madison Square Garden and all of that, then from what we're seeing, it's like you're trying to play both sides. And this is not a time for playing both sides. You're either on what this you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. But if you literally say you don't care about anything or either party, then you're going to try to ride the fence and somebody's going to come along and push you off the fence one way or the other. So my challenge to Stephen A is like, if you're going to do these commentaries, say what you want to say, but at the very least do your research. And you're smart enough to know when you're throwing out some things that are bait for the MAGA crowd that's going to get them maybe get subscribing to your channel, getting you some more clicks, some more likes, some more money, and so on and so forth. But if you're going to talk about being an educated black man who loves your HBCUs and all of that other type of stuff, then actually do things that uplift the black community, not just when you're talking in black spaces or you think you're talking before black people like on First Take, but when you go to the Cuomos of the world, when you go to the Tucker Carlsons and the Hannitys of the world. I've been on Hannity. He ain't called me back. So do you represent us in all spaces? And I'm not saying all black people think alike, but what I'm saying is the politics that you're sharing with them now doesn't represent some of the politics we saw with you before. And a lot of us are just wondering why. But those of us who don't wondering why, we're just, calling it like we see it, balls and strikes.
Man, and like you just said, like there might be conversations where if you're not informed, or if you truly feel like in the middle of something, like, okay, I got you. But when it comes to the broader conversations, like, it's really hard. Like, you have to really split hairs to say, I'm truly on the fence with the Democratic Party of today and the Republican Party. And I kind of snapped out of that myself of saying, like, oh, well, both parties are trash. Yeah. Like, oh, both this, both that. Like, I used to, feel like that. But once I really got into the details, really got into the nitty gritty, as they would say, like, you can't say that with a straight face. Like, yeah, the Democratic Party, they have their things that you can't critique, and we need to.
Of course.
But with the Republican Party, they're on a whole nother level. Like, you can't look me in the face and say both parties are the same. Like that's irresponsible. So like you say, like, when people like Stephen A. Smith start using MAGA talking points as if that's a basis of conversation, that's a problem. What do you think about that?
It's a problem unless it just is who he is. And my thing is, you look at what Jamel Hill got, fired from ESPN just for saying Trump's racist. I mean, look at all of the things that Stephen A. Smith have said. Oh, Democrats lost over this transgender. They care about transgender. But he didn't have anything to say about Caitlyn Jenner. Got an award from ESPN. Did you quit ESPN, Stephen A. Smith? Did you put out a blog, a post? Why? Because Caitlyn has wealth and access and money. And so, again, he's putting out talking points that rile people up. And really, at the end of the day, we have to call it out, because the things that he's saying, they're dangerous, and they lead to different communities to be targeted in ways that can be very problem. There's a strong attack on transgender community. Like, the smallest percentage of America's population is like transgender people. Yeah. You're putting out language like that, and people look at you, Stephen A., as a respected source. They're going to be like, well, yeah, this is a problem. What are you saying, Stephen A. Smith, to uplift communities? What are you saying, Stephen A. Smith, to uplift Black communities? What are you saying, Stephen A. Smith, that's working towards bringing people together? Look, at the end of the day, Stephen A. Smith has to understand that he has a powerful platform. And if you're not going to use your language to bring people together, if you're not going to use your platform to bring people together, if you're not going to say things that are going to uplift the Black community, you always talk about being proud of HBCU and so on and so forth. If your mindset is just, get your bag, get your paper, and you're good to go, being a proud capitalist and so on and so forth. I remember he was talking to a female commentator on ESPN, and he was basically saying, like, oh, now that you're kind of new to the game, you'll understand as you get older with this in this business. She was like, if doing this work means I got to compromise my principles, then I don't want it. I forget her name. Everybody will know who I'm talking about if I could remember her name. But at the end of the day, he's showing himself as somebody who doesn't have principles, with the only principle of gaining attention and more money. And this is a time right now where we have to pick sides. And are you going to be, and look, this isn't about all Black people need to think alike. This isn't about groupthink. My point is that he's saying things to audiences, with the Chris Cuomos and the Hannitys and the Tucker Carlsons of the world. He's saying things to people who already have negative views about us, negative thoughts about us, and they're looking for that Black friend, just like you see on the TV shows, that Black friend to confirm what they're already thinking, because they don't engage with enough of us. So Stephen A., if that's what you're going to do in this political space, then people like myself are going to continue to call you out, because it's problematic. And people say, well, why are you wasting your time? Because the algorithms matter. And if he's putting out that stuff, there needs to be stuff that's out there in the ethos out there that shows that there are contrary opinions to it, because otherwise people are just going to believe what he says and takes it as face value. And it's a problem. He could be suing so much more to uplift people. Go talk to the Republicans, go talk to conservatives, go talk to whoever, but do it in the spirit of bringing people together, not just going there and throwing smoke at us and throwing shade at us and disrespecting us and blaming a party that fought for the rights that your daughters enjoy, or would be able to enjoy if it wasn't for these Republicans. He's out there, caping with people who are putting in policies that will allow his daughters to have fewer rights than his sisters. So it's just like, what's that about? You cool with that? Or is it you're wealthy enough that these policies don't affect you and your family? Is that what it is? It's like Lil Wayne was talking about his daughter. Like, my daughter's too dark skinned. She's too dark. She's too dark, but she's rich, so she's going to be okay. Like, is that what we're doing here? You know what I'm saying? Or can we do better and do some things that are going to be better for all people? That's all I'm saying, Stephen A. And if they ain't going to do that, then, that's it.
And you make a good point. Like when Stephen A. was with Bill Maher, and Bill Maher, like he said it. Like it still confuses me on him saying, like, he was like, are we really that? Are we really in that bad of shape? Like, are we really struggling that bad? And it's like, these are two wealthy individuals. Like Stephen A. Smith, his contract is crazy huge. And for them to like sit there with 9 times out of 10 people who are making just as much as I am, looking at them and like, things are really okay, and like you said, like, I guess when you reach a certain amount of money, like, you don't care, I guess, like for the common good of other people. And like you say, like, I even, got access, like, why are you wasting your time with people like Stephen A. Smith? It's like, because he's convincing millions of people every single day and pushing out misinformation or half truths or not representing the majority of people. Like, he's purposely not doing that, and it's frustrating. And like you say, like, he's being pushed out in front of millions of people. There needs to be people that will challenge him, and hopefully it gets somewhere. And hope, like an interview like this, like, I need people to understand, like, there's actually educated people who are standing on principle, who are standing on integrity and morals. Like you one of the forwards on your book is someone that I admire a lot, Michael Eric Dyson. Saying, like people like that, like, they're always talking about there's no men on the Democratic side, depending on what spectrum you are on that, but they keep saying there's no men on the Democratic side that other young men can look up to. What I'm saying? Like the Cornel West, the Michael Eric Dysons, and people like yourself, like, they're educated, they're strong, and they have principles. And these principles are for more than just themselves. They're looking out for the broader people. So what is something that you would tell young people that are confused, that might just, they're being told there's no one on the left that they can look up to, and it's only, strong people like Trump or other, racist people like that are only credible to becoming a man?
Yeah, it's a straight up lie. Period. Bottom line. I mean, I could run down so many people. Look, just off the top, I'm thinking of Ilhan Omar. I'm thinking of Maxwell Frost. I'm thinking of Hakeem Jeffries. I'm thinking of Ayanna Pressley. I'm thinking of Jasmine Crockett. All of these are representatives, right? All Democrats, doing their thing. Look at Hakeem Jeffries. ABCs of Politics. He just put out a kid's book. Because he had that incredible freestyle about what the Democratic Party was going to stand for, that he did off the dome after Trump. But like, just look it up. Hakeem Jeffries, ABCs of Politics. It's amazing. So there are tons of people, and of course we have the elders in the party, like the Obama. Who are older, and of course people can look up to them as well. But it's important I mean, he's not like an elder like James Clyburn, but he's older than the Crockett's of the world.
Yeah.
So at every level, we have people that you can look. Michelle Obama. I mean, we have people that you can look up to, but you got to do the active work to follow them, to find them, and to understand them, because they're doing the work to talk to the people. The Democrats has and then we could take it outside of Black people. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Rashida Tlaib. Like, we can go down the list. There's so many people. I live in Maryland. We have the only Black governor in the country, in Westmore. So, who's doing incredible work. So I can spend half an hour running down names of Black people, male, female, young, older, senior, who are doing real work. So anybody who's saying that, don't believe them, don't follow them. You got to start listening more to the Power to the People podcast. You got to start listening more to Black Star Network with Roland Martin, that you can find me on every Monday night. You got to start listening more to Sirius XM if you got XM access, Urban View Channel 126 with Karen Hunter and Clay King and Louis Favors, and follow these people online. Don't fall for anybody who says there's not enough Black leaders today. Everybody's looking for Dr. King to come back down and Malcolm X to come back down. They ain't coming. We got enough people here who are doing the work right now in real time and are accessible and are in your communities right now. I mentioned people known on a national level, but if you look hard enough, not even hard enough, if you just look in your community, you will find that, but you got to do the work. That's one of the other reasons Trump got over, is because we no longer teach civics in our country. And so people don't understand civic engagement and participation. And that's one of the reasons that he got over. Do you know that, after Biden did his farewell speech and he talked about the rise of oligarchies in this country, the number one Google term search was, what is an oligarchy? Really? Like, people don't understand basic things, so they fall for anything. And we got to do better than that.
That is crazy. And one thing that I do in my community notes, like on my YouTube channel, I have a daily like basic civics polling or like questionnaires, because I would, even myself, I'm learning some things, because unfortunately in high school I didn't pay attention, so some of these things I'm learning myself. And when I have these conversations with people, they don't know what I'm talking about. Exactly. So just doing simple things is like, hey, here's a daily question of, what's the role of a president, within the three branches of government, like just basic things like that. And one thing that you said about being accessible, that's one thing that makes someone like you that I seen on Dr. Phil, and I said, I'm just going to shoot my shot, just see if he, connects. And you did, and that puts you on a whole nother level to people like me. It's like, not only that you're amazing, Black and educated, like you actually are human, and you will take the time to speak to me. You know what I'm saying? And that is going to carry throughout my life forever. You know what I'm saying? And now you're going to be in my conversations when I talk about a Cornel West or Michael Eric Dyson. Like, that means something. And so, one, like, I can't tell you enough, I highly appreciate you taking the time and just conversating with me. And even if this doesn't reach people like we wanted to, like, this means something to me personally. And if anything, that means more than any views or anything that this video could get. Like, this means something to me because you took the time out to speak to me. And, that speaks volumes than any book or any accolades that a person can accumulate, is that you're actually speaking to regular people like myself, so I appreciate that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you. We're all regular people at the end of the day. Yeah. We're all just doing the work in our different spaces. And, one of the challenges, when people get to other types of levels, is they feel like they can only talk to people who are at their quote unquote level. Mm-hmm. I was never raised to believe that. I believe as human beings, we're all at the same level. And nobody's more important or valuable than the other. No degree is more important than this, that, or that. We're all supposed to be in this together. That's why I do this work. And so I appreciate you reaching out to me. It means a lot to me. I don't, no one else, particularly on the Stephen A. Smith thing, reached out to have a conversation on a podcast and the like. Maybe they weren't feeling what I'm going to say or what I was going to say. But you did. So, all of the appreciation and admiration that you're throwing my way, I appreciate, and I'm throwing it right back at you, not just on my behalf, but on behalf of my brothers who really have my actual blood brothers who sent me the links and stuff that you were doing, who also have a respect for what you're doing as well, man. So let's just keep growing and building together.
And that's one thing I would love to see in 2025 is you would to go on to Stephen A. Smith's podcast and really challenge him. Like, and like I said, like there's people that can go onto these platforms and have these conversations, sure, but you need to be well equipped. Like, not anyone can just go on to Fox News or Chris Cuomo and just talk. Is being well equipped to do that. And if anyone, in my opinion, can do it, is you. So if there's anything I'm pushing, is to do that. So we're gonna keep calling out Stephen A. Smith until we can make that happen. And I got one last question from you. This is someone who was in my Discord for 2 years. So I asked these certain individuals if what question would you ask, and one person, they noticed that you went to school in Maryland. And he lives in Baltimore, and one of his question is if you're into seafood, and this is not politics, so this is a good, beautiful question outside of politics. He said, do you eat seafood, and if you do, what do you think about the crabs in Baltimore?
Oh, delicious. I do eat seafood. I do eat seafood. My favorite seafood would be salmon, I would say. But I mean, how could you not go down? Look, my wife and I run a bunch of hot yoga and Pilates studios, and one of our studios is in Baltimore. So, we get down there, pretty regularly. And so, yeah, absolutely, to answer that question.
Yeah, I told him, like, I live in Colorado, so it's really not a seafood type of environment
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
But when
yeah.
it comes to fish, like, I never really dove into it. So, like, I would be scared. Like, literally just seeing a fish on a plate, that's not what I eat here in the city of Colorado.
I
So that
got
would
you.
be something, I would have to work up to. But like that was a question on his mind, and he was really curious about that. But once again, Dr. Dibinga, I really appreciate you taking your time, and we definitely need to do this more in the future.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for reaching out.